Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 14 of the Give 'em Heck podcast. I'm Brian. This is your host, Penny. And one or two quick announcements. So we have the new logo done. We're very excited to show it off. It looks really good. When we first started, it was very complex. Like we had so much going on in it. And by the time it got done, we had slimmed so much of it down. But honestly, in this case, I think less is more.
Yeah, it looks good.
It looks very good. And like I said, all of the symbolism that the tree has, I personally am very excited to share that information because the context of that tree is the tree of life. The tree of life. And if any of you are familiar with biblical lore, you know, the tree of life is in the Garden of Eden. But, we meant it to symbolize hope.
Hope.
You know, and the new tree that we have.
It does that.
It does that. It's really cool. We're very excited to show that off. And it seems like there was something else. TikTok. TikTok. Well, yeah, that. But so the TikTok is going to be, unfortunately, has to be pushed back another week. The logo was just done.
Yep.
And we haven't had time to make it into a poster yet. So, unfortunately, we're going to have to push it back another week or two, sadly. It'll be worth the wait. We have some cool things planned, but we're very excited to show that off. So bear with us on the TikTok. It's coming. We want more people to come to our podcast to experience another side of I guess perspectives on life.
Yeah.
You know, so we're really looking forward to that. And I believe that's it. So without further ado, let's get this train rolling.
All right. So this is episode. Okay, we'll get it right. This is episode 14. Sorry, I don't know if you said that, but
I did.
You did. Okay. Yep. They just seem to go so fast.
I know. The fact that we've been doing this for, literally 14 weeks at this point.
It's crazy.
Yeah. It still feels like we kind of just started.
Yeah, it's crazy. So it's confusing sometimes, but that's okay. So I just want to say thank you to all of our viewers that have continued to watch the podcast and comment in. We do read the comments and we do appreciate those. And they're very good. And we're glad that we are helping others as well as ourselves. But that was the whole point, was to let people know that even though we may not always agree or think the same, that there is always hope. So with that being said, again, with our disclaimer, we're not doctors, psychologists, or counselors. We're not giving any medical or psychological advice. We're just simply here to discuss real life situations to give hope, encouragement, and instill change. So in our last episode, and any of you that are new viewers, thank you for popping in. The way it works is we kind of reiterate last week's podcast, and it flows into the new podcast for the week. So last week we discussed what now, and we talked about the what now and what that meant to you. And when I asked you that, Brian, what now, you said to you it means looking into the future.
Yeah, looking ahead.
And it's so different than what I thought, because we think so differently. Because some people can look at, because we had talked about the why, right, and how irrelevant it is. And people can look at the what now and think, oh, God, again, what now? You know what I mean? It's that kind of attitude.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you took it from a different perspective.
More positive from my side.
And you always do, which isn't a bad thing. So because we all deal with individual life situations, what does that change look like? I gave you 3 examples. One was losing a job in the what now scenario. Remember what you said?
Vaguely.
You said, how can I word it? You said to take those skills.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Take those skills with you to further advance future opportunities and, future walks in life.
Instead of looking at it from a negative
instead of looking at it as look at all this stuff I lost, now I've got nothing. And you always take things with you. You know, a lot of people don't tend to look at it that way. When when a bad situation happens, a lot of people think, well, that's it. That's the end of the road. It doesn't have to be. You know, you can always take experiences and lessons and skills with you wherever you go to further advance yourself in other things. You know, humans are very versatile, you know.
It's true.
So it's like, why be so narrow-minded?
Yeah.
You know, it's what I tell my friends all the time. Like, oh, I lost a job. Now I've got all these skills that I can't do anything with. Well, not if you don't push yourself, or at the very least have a drive.
Right.
You know, pushing yourself doesn't always lead to success. Sometimes it leads to stress. But, you know, having the skill set to do certain things can advance you in other places you never thought it could.
Yeah. Yeah, and you can grow from one situation to another, whether it be a job or just a life situation in general. But I think sometimes our lack of thinking out of the box is difficult, isn't it?
A lot of people, regrettably, they lack foresight. You know, they're very stuck in the moment.
Why?
I think it's easier. You know, a lot of people like to live in the moment because it's easier for them to, I guess, cope with their current situation instead of, because for some people, thinking ahead can be stressful for them when they don't realize that it's actually more beneficial to keep your eyes forward instead of down in front of you.
Is it the change?
It could be a huge facet of things, you know. But it's like taking, you know, when I took my driving test, you know, my instructor always told me, when you're driving, don't look at where your hood is or directly in front of you. Look ahead of you, because that helps you focus more on what's coming as opposed to
That's good.
the nothing in front of you.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So I took that with me after all these years.
Wow.
And kind of have
And you
used that.
adapted that to life situations.
Yeah.
Wow.
Isn't that funny?
It is funny. That is very funny. The second example I gave you was like a divorce or a breakup.
Yeah.
And I believe you had said that not to look at the bad things in those situations.
Yep.
But to look at the good memories that may have been there. Sometimes those are hard to find, but...
Well, and I don't mean good as in the context of just, oh, that was a good trip we had or something like that. When I say look at the good, I mean to be thankful for it. You know, to look at the good memories and good moments with an uplifting heart, because it helps bring you a better perspective on, number one, what you want in a future relationship if you ever get one. And it can also sometimes, if you don't want a relationship in the future, it can help you realize what you had and be more grateful for it. Like, I'm glad I had the opportunity. It's like owning a nice car and then having to give it away.
Right, and I think you said that.
I made that example. It's like, instead of being like, man, I had that really nice car and now it's gone, be like, I'm glad I had the opportunity to have that. It may have given me quite a few headaches while owning it, but, you know, I'm still happy I had the opportunity to have something like that. It's the same thing in relationships. You know, you can, in the example of the divorce, you could be like, you know, I had a lot of headaches in that relationship, but I'm happy I had the opportunity. I'm thankful for it.
Wow.
And you can use that in those two ways. You can either look at what you would want in a future relationship, or you could just be like, I'm ready to just be by myself, work on myself, or, you know, just take that time alone. Be like, you know, I'm happy I had the opportunity. A lot of good came out of it.
It's hard to find the good in stuff, though. And I know for you, Brian, it isn't. And I think that's why you and I are so good together in this podcast, is because we're so different. Like, it amazes me how you can find the positive and the good and all of that. And for me, it's not. And I just want to be honest about it, because there's probably a lot of people out there watching that are like me. And I don't know how to do that. I try. But maybe it's because I expect the
Would
worst.
it surprise you if I said I think you're trying too hard?
Oh, explain.
Yeah, I think you're trying too hard. I'm not saying this in the case of our viewers. You know, obviously, I don't know your mindset, but in the case of being personal for a sec, I think you try too hard. I think you try too hard to make things work when instead it's literally just going with the flow. Going past moments, good or bad, taking them in stride, and not letting whatever situation hold you back or stop you.
Why do I do that?
It could be habit. Force a habit. You know, sometimes it's hard to get out of a preset mindset when you've had it for so long. Me, I've had this mindset for years. So in my case, it's second nature. But I don't want you to think I was always like this. You know, there were times in my past where I was just like that. You know, I only focused on not necessarily the negatives, but, you know, it was hard for me to look at the positives through things.
So when you say I'm trying too hard, and I know you're right, I'm not asking you how to get out of that rut, if you want to call it that, but why do you think I do that? Is it fear?
I think it's control.
What?
I think it's control. I think there's a part of you that thinks that if you essentially don't surrender, that you'll lose control when you don't realize that you've already lost control. And that's a good thing, because we don't have control.
You think I'm a controlling person?
No, not controlling.
Okay.
I mean, like, in regards to feelings, emotions, stresses, anxieties, situations, you know, there's this feeling of control that you feel you need to have, that if you just relinquish that control, whether it be emotional, mental, physical, whatever, that you'll all of a sudden spiral. But what you don't realize, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, but the more you surrender a situation, the more in control of it you actually are. Because now, if you surrender it, you're not letting it control you.
It's true. Because I constantly feel like I'm spiraling. Wow. Yeah, I do. Constantly, I feel like I'm not in control, but trying to be in control. And I feel like my life is just always on a spiral downward.
I encourage you to go with the flow.
Now, I'm going to tell you why that's difficult. Not that you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking from a personal point of view here.
We're being very personal in this podcast, apparently. In this episode, I mean.
I feel like if I don't do that, maybe it's the lack of losing control, but you're saying I already have.
It's not a matter of whether you lost control. For me, I'm saying you never had control. See, that's the whole point that I'm trying to make with this going through the flow thing and rolling with the punches of life. You can't control everything. The only one you have control over is yourself. So rolling with the punch as it's coming for you can help you roll away from it and then keep moving forward. But if you constantly feel that you're battling yourself through emotions, mentally, physically, you know, go down the line, the more you feel yourself struggling against yourself. You're no longer rolling with the punch, you're going straight into it. And it just keeps getting worse, because life is going to constantly throw things at you. Mm-hmm. You know? So instead of thinking about it as one big situation, take it in stride. One thing at a time, one day at a time. Mm. It's very easy to surrender, but you have to be the one to do that.
And then what happens when you do?
You're free.
You sure?
It's working fine for me so far. Not to say that I don't have bad days. You know I've mentioned this in prior episodes, but I don't want to sit here and give the impression that I have everything figured out. You know, I am the furthest thing from perfect, you know. But what helps me is that I don't focus on the negatives. because there's so much more to life than that. You know, life is like a big work of art. I'm not going to lose my mind over one little painting mistake when I have a whole canvas that looks amazing. If anything, the flaw in that canvas shows the imperfection that leads to your perfection, because you learn from it. The next art you make will improve. It's a stepping stone.
Wow.
It's not a jump or a leap. It's steps.
But what happens if once I let go, it doesn't work out quite the way I planned?
Why does that have to be a bad thing? If anything, you telling me that it's not working out the way you planned tells me you still want control. Is this a therapy session? Just give me a pen and paper and be like, how does that make you feel?
No, I understand what you're saying. Yeah.
See, take these lessons with you. I mean, they're important, you know, for you and the audience. Like, surrendering doesn't have to be what you want it to be, but that's okay. Because if anything, it helps you take things, I guess, less seriously, if that makes sense.
Is that the key?
Yeah, essentially, it's just maybe not caring as much, not in a reckless way,
Right.
but understanding that life is chaotic.
But I try to prevent it. That's where the control comes in. There it is. I want to prevent that.
You can't. Let me ask you this, and for anyone in the audience who wants to give their input on this, go, leave it in the comments. But based on what you're doing, what has worked?
Nothing.
So.
But haven't I limited some of the bad things? I don't know.
I would say more like delaying the inevitable.
Oh.
Because think about it. You can keep a boulder from landing on you as much as you can, but eventually it's gonna fall. And that's the problem with people who don't want to relinquish control. It's that it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and then before you know it, you're crushed. And sometimes you don't even notice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you still keep trying to lift. But it's okay to let go of that rock and run. Be free,
Mm-hmm.
Because at that point, that rock is no longer your responsibility. You deal with the consequences of it rolling down the hill, but you're not responsible for holding it up.
Wow.
If you understand the analogy.
I do. Yeah. I do. Yeah. Okay, there was that one. And then I gave you the example of the death of a loved one.
Mm-hmm.
And, we used Nana and Papa as an example. And then you had said basically the what now and that is that you hold on to the good memories. Because you never really reacted the way the norm, who knew, that everybody thought or expected.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm still working on that one. That one's tough.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I liked your examples. That's why I wanted to bring them up. So it always involves changing our situation. And that's where it gets personal. Obviously, we've been talking about that. It's changing ourselves, also changing ourselves from the inside. So let me ask you this, Brian. Do you believe that, and I'm not talking about the change, what I'm asking you right now is with the what now, okay? From the perspective that you take it. Do you believe that it always starts with you?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Even if it involves other people?
Yeah. Because other people aren't living in your shoes. You are your own vessel. Your own entity.
But what you do affects others.
And what does it matter how it affects them if it impacts you negatively? Why should you have to conform to other people's ideals of normal, I don't know the word. I'm going to get my words all on a tongue twister. What's normal to somebody else may not be normal to me, and vice versa. So if anything, if it impacts them negatively, that shows that they were not in your court. They wanted you to conform to them.
Okay.
Even if it's the masses, you know, you have 100 people in a room mourning over somebody's death, and you have one person who just is stoic but grieving in their own way. Why is that a bad thing?
Okay. Even if it affects them, it's still...
That's a them problem. Forgive my bluntness, but it's a them problem.
Right.
Because everybody grieves in their own way. Everybody deals with life in their own way.
So what you're saying is that everyone should accept everybody for how they deal with their situations.
Imagine if that worked for a minute. Imagine if we lived in a world where everybody could just understand each other. Instead of constantly judging and demanding and criticizing. Imagine if we lived in a world like that.
Why do we do it?
Because inherently humans are selfish. We are selfish and prideful beings that care about nothing but ourselves, and we are more interested in making ourselves feel better than those around us.
True. And
it takes somebody with absolute courage to be self-aware and realize that what you're doing is not okay. And what I could be doing is not okay. But at the end of the day, regardless, compassion, understanding, encouragement, tolerance.
That's good. Yeah.
These things are what are important.
Yeah.
And if you go against that and you judge, then you're doing nothing but preaching hatred. I'm just calling it how it is.
Yeah. It is about meeting people where they're at.
It's about meeting people where they're at and understanding their mindsets. You can't just start yelling at somebody because you're acting differently than what I would want you to. What gives me the right to tell you how I think you should act? And vice versa.
So it's okay. What is that saying that in college the professor used to say? It's okay for us to, we can disagree to disagree.
Let's agree to disagree.
Yeah, and it's okay. Yeah. I think it's great because it brings a lot of different perspectives to the table, right? And everybody's at a different place in their life.
Well, even if one side is right and one side is wrong.
Who determines that?
Well, it could be a factual thing, depending on how intense we want to get into it. But I mean, I'm just talking about situations in general when it comes to somebody dealing with something personal. Regardless of which side is right and wrong, what gives you the right to tell me what you think is right? What if my right, or what if the way I'm doing it is the right way, and the way you're doing it is the wrong way, but you're going to sit here and just not understand? See, that's the problem I've always had with that term, let's agree to disagree. You've completely shut off the argument at that point, or you've completely closed your mind to it.
Oh, wow.
I hate that.
Okay.
Because I'm the kind of person that even if I have an opinion or a mindset or an idea and I'm not completely educated on it, but I still give my opinion on it, if I say to somebody, let's agree to disagree, I'm basically just closing my mind off. Basically, when I hear somebody say that, I hear, I don't want to talk about it anymore. Because all of a sudden, I'm facing cognitive dissonance and I don't want to learn anything. I'm shutting my mind off. I don't want to understand you. I don't want to understand your mindset because I don't care what you think. It's very selfish.
Oh, wow.
Keeping an open mind on everything can really bring people together. Because if you understand perspective, mindset, intention, personality, you've basically opened yourself up like a book. And you're not necessarily whiting out parts of the book, you're adding to it.
Oh, that's good.
See, I'm the kind of person that's like, I am willing to hear the most controversial things that this world can dish out.
You do.
Regardless of whatever it is. I'm an open book. I'm an open mind. I want to hear everybody's side. Whether it comes to personal issues, world issues, feelings, mindsets, whatever. You name it, I've heard it. And never once have I looked at a person that has a differing mindset than me and I say, I hate you because of it.
Wow.
If anything, it draws me closer to them because not only do I want to understand more of their mindset, but I want to maybe see if they'll be open to my side.
Wow.
But once you shut the other person down by saying, let's agree to disagree, you're basically telling me you want to just go back in your little bubble. Your mindset is being challenged and you don't like it.
People don't like to be challenged.
Because again, we're inherently selfish.
Well, and a lot of people don't know what to do with that. Like, you know what to do with that, Brian, because you've done it for so long. I've seen you debate with people, good, bad, and ugly. But some people don't like to be challenged.
Well, it's because life is very simplistic. It doesn't have to be this huge convoluted thing that people make life out to be. I enjoy life in spite of all the bad.
Real.
You only live once. You know, life is a gift. Regardless of what some people think, life is a gift. Because you didn't have to be born. You didn't have to come into this world, but yet you did. And life is what you make it.
So we all bring something to the table.
Absolutely. Everybody brings a perspective, an idea, a personality. They bring themselves.
You think everybody's valuable, Brian?
Everybody is not just valuable, everybody's priceless.
Wow. That's good, Brian.
And see, I can look at the most evil person on earth and think, if only they had used their gifts for good.
Yeah.
Because that's what I look for, you know, like they can deal with the consequences in this life of their actions. You know, the most evil person you can think of, I can think of several off the top of my head, but you look at them and you're like, you know, that person deserves all the bad that's happening to them. They deserve the worst because they committed, you know, terrible things. But I look at that and I think the extent that this person went through to do the things that they did. Imagine if they just used that for good, the outreach they would have.
Right. If their life just would have went in a different direction.
And I look at them, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I look at them and I think, how dare you squander your potential?
Right. Do you look at them and think, what the heck went wrong?
Well, obviously, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, something
something
went
happened.
drastically wrong.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, they're still human. And yes, they do have to deal with the consequences of their actions, whatever their consequences or their judgments came to. But at the end of the day, them as a human life, invaluable. And it's a shame they had to throw their value away. They did that to themselves.
Right.
But imagine if everybody had that mindset of like, you know, you're not just a worthless human being. You add so much, and yet you squander it for what? For what?
Mm-hmm.
You know, you cause violence and hatred and all of this other stuff. Why?
Yeah.
Because, here's the answer, because you are a prideful, hateful, and selfish human being. And shame on you for that.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Wow. That's good insight.
Because I've always learned that as long as you still draw breath, you can always turn your life around.
Mm-hmm.
But you refusing to do that, to lay yourself down and admit that you're no better than anybody else, or know that the skills that you may or may not have can bring something to the table, or the advancements that you have, and you do nothing with them,
mm-hmm.
It's the epitome of pride,
right,
of selfishness, of arrogance.
Mm-hmm.
But you're doing that to yourself.
Right.
Doesn't mean I devalue you. If anything, I pity you.
Mm. Wow. That was good. So, with that being said, yes, it does start with you, and you do have to do what's best for you, whatever that means. Sometimes you can change those situations, and sometimes you can't. This is where your outlook, your perspective on your situation matters. Why? Because you're not a victim.
Don't even get me started on the victim mentality the world has.
Right?
Oh.
I think you kind of touched on that a little bit too. Isn't that where the pride thing comes into play, Brian?
It can. It leads to it. I mean, it's a winding road, but everything connects to the same thing. You putting yourself up on a pedestal like you're something special.
Right.
When you don't realize that the pedestal you're standing on is nothing but a pile of crap.
Wow. Okay. I know that's you. You put it out there. So, in today's podcast, we're going to discuss vindication, redemption, and restoration. And we're going to look at it in the direction that we took the what now. And I'll explain that is with the what now, we looked more at the inner person, right? It was not what now is going to happen on the outside, but what's happening to us on the inside.
Right.
So when I say that in that perspective, Brian, of looking at yourself from the inside, what do you think when I say vindication?
I don't use that word often. So, remind me exactly what it means.
Vindication, to some people, would think about getting back at somebody.
So it's like revenge?
Yeah. But I want you to take it from a person.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, no, I was thinking of a completely different word, and I can't remember what the word was, but when you said that, I was thinking it had something to do with redemption. So vindication would be like a description of like you wanting to get back at somebody or something.
There could be a couple different ways you could look at it, but when I say it to you, like I know what I think of, I want to know what you think. From the perspective that we've been taking it of the what now, like a personal thing.
It's more of like a... See, it could be a completely wrong definition, so forgive me if I get it wrong, because again, I don't
There's
use
no
that
right
word.
or wrong.
I don't use that word often. But when I think of it in the context of what you're talking about, I think of it like like the world owes me.
Yep.
Like I'm owed something. It's a very negative context. Maybe that's why I don't use it, because it's a negative thing. But it almost sounds like I need retribution. And again, what gives you the right to think you need anything? Right. So, it's a very, forgive the simplistic answer. Usually I'm very drawn out in this kind of thing, but it's something that doesn't cross my mind very much, because I personally don't feel like I'm owed anything.
Okay.
I'm owed nothing. If I have that victim mentality of that I need some kind of, I guess, compensation for bad things, or then I am making myself better than everybody else.
Okay. What about redemption?
Now, redemption is a word I'm very familiar with. Redemption goes into one of two things for me, because I think it's very important to understand what redemption, regardless of what context you take it in, it requires an admittance, if that's the right word. You need to admit, you're putting yourself out there and be like, I know these things that I did were wrong. And the redemption that I need is almost taking responsibility, if not actually taking responsibility. Like I'm redeeming myself against the actions that I had committed in the past. It's an accountability.
Wow.
And the second thing is, it's almost like an acknowledgement of change.
Accepting.
Yeah, an acknowledgement that, this can't continue. I need to do something
to make it
right.
Right. And what about restoration? I love that word.
Restoration is in my opinion, the end goal, the end game. It's like you are restored, or in the process of it.
Yeah.
You've reached a place where you realize that there is that green grass that's been there the whole time that you were just never aware of.
I love that word. Okay, those were really good. You kind of thought of them, of course, much different than me. So I'm going to tell you my perspective on it. So vindication. I'm sorry. Vindication. When I think of that, I think of from the point of what now is that time has a way. I'm taking it from a personal standpoint of learning to love myself. I'm not looking at it as a way of vindicating myself to get back at somebody, to punish them for things that they've done to me. I'm looking at it to learn to love myself. Time has a way for me to do that. My vindication comes from accepting my faults, but also knowing that in time, I'll be vindicated to learn to accept those things, but to love myself.
So vindication doesn't mean what I thought it did?
It does. There's many different meanings for it.
Oh.
It can mean revenge. It can also mean, like, when you vindict yourself, like I'm talking about, it's that I'm getting myself back to a place where, like I said, I'm learning to love myself again. That's my vindication.
I just learned something.
And you said to me last week, and you asked me, you said, do you love yourself? And I thought about that all week. And that's a tough one. Because I can honestly say, Brian, I don't think I have. And I think that, with many other issues that we're working through, and we share that with our audience, is I don't need to get back at other people for things that have happened in my life. I just need to worry about myself, and I need to learn how to love myself again. And you said that. You said if you learn to love yourself, it's going to solve a lot of problems, basically. It's hard to love yourself.
Oh, yeah, trust me. It is.
Yeah. Because there's so much guilt and faults and
see, that's
shame.
the problem. That's the problem that I have with the way that the world is. The way people treat each other is that they're so judgmental that they feel that there needs to be this level, this standard of you need to be just like me. Well, I'm sorry, I'm not. Think like I do, act like I do. Why? Life would be boring if we were all machines.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's where free will comes in, right?
No, it's not even just about free will. Like the concept of just being a human being. That's what I mean. It's the realization of uniqueness. But if you start treating me like I should be this higher, put myself on a higher pedestal like you, not you specifically, you know what I mean. But what kind of a person would that make me?
Right. You know better.
Just because I'm in a better position than you doesn't mean I'm any more important.
Right. And that's why I said I love the point of views that you and I both think of, because even with the word vindication, to me it's finding myself again. It's knowing that at the end of the day, maybe there's something I can learn about myself. Not just loving myself, but maybe learning something about myself to make myself that better person that I want to be. Does that make sense?
Or even maybe realizing your own personal potential.
There. That's what I'm talking about when I say vindication. So with redemption, I look at it maybe the same as you, that something good will come out of it. It's a future thing. You had said last week about the cocoon and the butterfly. And how people limit themselves in where they're at right now because they're afraid to move forward. And you had said about turning into a butterfly, how much better that person, that life would be. And that was also something that I thought about all week, because I thought, wow, maybe I haven't given myself the credit that I really thought I did.
Or maybe you were just limiting yourself. A lot of people like to stay in the caterpillar stage because it's easier.
It is easier. It's hard to fly.
You have so much more freedom.
Yeah, I know. And that's where the redemption comes from. Now, the restoration, I did say, I love that word. This is where you find healing and peace. I think restoration, like you said, Brian, it's almost like at the place where you found that you've arrived. But that, do you think that's ever attainable? In all honesty.
I think it's a goal. I don't think it's something that could ever 100% be achieved. But that's the whole point of self-love, is you bringing yourself to a position of humbleness. You know, if that makes sense.
So it's a growth every day.
Yeah, you never stop growing.
Yeah. And I think in the no, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
The thing that I like is because, as for me, as an example, I don't ever consider myself to be finished or complete. Every day is a new opportunity. Every day is a chance to grow a few more inches. So every step you take in life brings you to a place of new growth, but there's no limit. Some days you can grow more than others.
Right.
But that growth continues.
Right. That's okay.
If anything, it's perfect.
Even if you have to step back sometimes.
Plants can lose their growth, but that doesn't mean they stop.
Mm-hmm.
Every winter, plants die, but they always come back.
Right, right.
There's a difference between withering and dying.
Right.
So that's when you need to make that step of realizing, I might not be as strong as I could be.
Mm-hmm.
Bent, but not broken.
Yeah. You've said that before. And I think in the restoration, because I was talking to my cousin this week, and I told her, I said, maybe the part of this, of going through all this healing process, is that I haven't been able to give myself permission.
You've been stunting your own growth.
Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say.
Isn't it amazing how we as human beings can do more damage to ourselves than anybody around us?
Oh, absolutely. We're our worst enemies, aren't we? Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
We can totally destroy ourselves just with one thought. It's scary, isn't it?
Yep. I can have people say the worst thing to me, but if I let what they say get to me, then at that point, I'm the one planting the poisonous soil.
Right, right. Wow. So
I've made a lot of plant analogies this episode.
Yeah. Are you into horticulture? Is that what we're doing now?
I'm going to be a gardener.
A gardener. All right. So we all have to believe that we have been or are going through, that what we've been going through has meaning and value, that it's not all for nothing. And I use that in this way with my cousin again. I remember shortly after Mom had passed away, this was way before we even started our podcast, I remember standing over Mom's grave one day. Matter of fact, Papa was still alive at this time. And because everything was just so sudden and traumatic, I just stood there and I said, this can't be for nothing. There has to be value in this. Mm-hmm. Yes, I know she's gone. Yes, I know there's nothing I can do. But it can't be for nothing. And that's what I'm saying when I say the restoration part has to deal with that. To me, that's the big part of that healing, is the restoration. Because that's why we started the podcast, right? I understand that. But doesn't that have to do a lot with what different situations that people go through in their life, Brian? Is that people need that vindication for themselves. They need that redemption. They need that restoration. They need to know that what they're going through and what they've been through, that it's not just all for nothing.
And that's up to you to carry on.
Are you saying that in some situations there is no vindication, there is no redemption, there is no restoration?
Only if you don't allow it.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Because like I said, at that point, you're the one in control of yourself. You carry on.
Mm.
You see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I remember her saying, well, maybe what you're going through, you'll be able to help others.
Mm-hmm. We've talked about that in prior episodes.
Mm-hmm. But I know, and I'm trying to say this from a point of view that I know there's probably people listening to us tonight that are feeling exactly how I did the day I stood over her grave. It is such a detrimental, dark place. And and that's the whole purpose of our podcast, is I just want people to know that there is vindication for you within yourself. There is redemption, and there will come restoration. You know, you said last week, Brian, that every day is a reset.
Yep.
But sometimes it's hard. Those resets are hard. You don't think so?
It's not that I don't think so, because I know where you're coming from. I do. My thing is, when you bring yourself to that point where you're at your lowest, I think to myself, why are you limiting your outreach?
Maybe it's in the moment of the pain. Sometimes it's hard to see beyond that.
Is it?
I don't know.
See, for me, I could relate to friends who were in the same boat. And if anything, I took the pain and I amplified it. And I used it to boost them. It's like taking a volatile fuel and turning it into something that can really spark and use that fire
For good.
for good.
Yeah. Well, and that's why we did the podcast, right?
Finding the purpose for pain.
Purpose for pain. I like that. Is there always purpose for pain?
There's always something you can use that for. Turn it around for something else.
That's good.
Use it as fuel.
That's really good. So it's true, because every day you're learning more about yourself through this journey, right? Nana always said, never despise the journey. You never know where it's going to lead you. Yeah. It always starts with you, and know that it may take small steps to get there. And my cousin, when we were talking, she was talking about the tree, because we were talking about that. And she said, the funny thing is you use the tree as your symbol, as your sign for your podcast. She said, but did you ever think about it that a tree starts with a very small seed, but it can grow into something big and beautiful? It's pretty amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
One of my friends, going off of that example, talked about the tree, the weeping willow.
Yeah.
Always said how, the tree always looks like it's depressed. But you ever look at how big a weeping willow can get?
They're huge.
And and that's the thing. It may look, sick, may look beaten down, but man, does that tree grow big. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of like how I view myself.
Yeah.
I may not be the strongest. I may not be the brightest. I may not stand the tallest, but I can make myself as big as I want to be.
Yeah. Yep.
And reach that potential that I know I have.
That's awesome.
That tree doesn't let its weighing down branches hold it down from getting bigger.
No, it can get very big.
That's how I view the people who are hurting.
That's good.
You're
Brian.
beaten down, but you ain't bent. You're still growing.
Yeah. Yep. Keep going. That's right.
Don't quit.
Don't quit. So I have a saying that I found on one of my friends' posts on Facebook that I want to leave you guys with tonight. And it says this: give yourself more credit. You're trying to grow while trying to heal. You're trying to forgive while you're trying to grieve. You're trying to search while you're trying to let go. And you're trying to love others while you're remembering how to love yourself. You're doing the best you can.
Yep. And as we've said in prior episodes, your best is always good enough.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Is there anything else you want to add tonight? Because I think we're going to wrap it there.
We are. I guess just an encouragement to go out to those dealing with the finding it hard to find your road to redemption.
That's good.
Realizing that the potential that you have to grow is so much more than you think it is. It's not hard to find success through failure. And it's most certainly not hard to redeem yourself through the actions that you have taken in life. Yeah. Because you can always use the experiences, the circumstances, situations, good and bad, to help yourself grow through others. I always look at it as you are the plant and the people you hurt are the sunlight. They help replenish you. They can help you grow.
Right.
Because you're humbling yourself. You're putting yourself in a position where no matter what I'm going through, I can still take the time for you.
Nice.
And that redemption that you gain through that self-satisfaction can push you so much more than you think it can. So don't let life hold you down. Don't let your past hold you down.
That's good, Brian.
Always look forward. Because that's what's most important.
Yeah. Yeah. And learn to love yourself.
Learn to love yourself.
Let the vindication be that you're not getting back at other people, but that vindication comes from an inner thing, that you look at yourself. It's self-reflection. It's taking that time for yourself and learning to love yourself. That's where the vindication will come from. And give yourself permission to heal and to find that restoration, to restore yourself. You may not restore yourself back to where you were. I don't know. I'm definitely not back to where I was. Is that okay? It might have to be. But know that you can give yourself permission to restore yourself to wherever that needs to be. Maybe for the short term right now. Maybe eventually it will be you again. I don't know.
I argue the new person is so much better than the old.
I know you do. I know you do. And maybe that's what it'll be. Maybe.
Don't be afraid of that. Don't be afraid of that. Because, I look at it as like, why limit yourself to what you used to be when you could be so much better with a new person?
That's true.
There's nothing wrong with wanting to shed your skin and becoming somebody so much better.
Yeah.
Because it's growing.
Yeah. So be kind to yourself, right? And again, we always say, believe in yourself, be patient with yourself, and know that your best is always good enough. Know that we can be found on many different platforms like YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. Please like, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to let you know when there's going to be other podcasts available. Again, always leave comments, good, bad, or ugly. Our email is giveemheck@gmail.com. And I think that will wrap it up for tonight.
All right. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night.